So one of the questions that came up this morning in the limo, the Tech Field Day ride around town, after our discussions with Avaya, was the difference in the market between data center networking and wireless networking, between storage and network and wireless and so on. Basically, to me, as an outsider to the wireless space, I was kind of surprised that the wireless people were entirely dismissive of things like interoperability and multi-vendor solutions and white box, and yet those are like major topics, major trends in other areas of IT. And so my question was, and I asked George because he seemed like he had a clue about such things. My question was basically, why is wireless so different? Why is it that wireless is so focused on essentially proprietary, single vendor, monolithic solutions instead of opening up like every other part of IT? So, I don't know, to kick it off, George, you want to just reiterate what you said? Or yeah.
Yeah, I think, since day one, vendors have a value add, and they kind of go down different roads. It's very difficult because you have the common medium, which is 802.11. And you know what, let me take a step back. For those of us, and I know, Keith, you've been aged as well as I have, but back in the day before the Wi-Fi Alliance, when if you bought an Avaya AP or whatever type of AP it was at the time, you had to purchase their card as well if you really wanted clean interoperability, right? And I think that really set the stage. Even though the Wi-Fi Alliance came in and they worked on interoperability, but there's still that. You buy the Cisco infrastructure, you buy the Aruba infrastructure, meaning APs and controllers, you're going to get the widgets along with it. I think when you go white box with this, you're going to lose a lot of that functionality. One of the things that comes to mind is the Cognito chipset that's in the Cisco APs, right? So what happens if there's this white box and you have mixed vendor? You're probably going to lose a lot of that functionality.
Best effort, if anything.
Actually,
Right.
I would take your comment and expand on it further. I think it is the Wi-Fi Alliance's fault. Their job was to take and set a standard, and instead of setting the standard of interoperability, they had as their constituent members, vendors. And in order to placate those members, they lowered the standard and said, here's what 802.11 needs, but in order to be Wi-Fi stickerable, it's a far subset, then a whole bunch of options. Mm-hmm. So they reinforced that vendors can have proprietariness and have standards, the certified Wi-Fi standard, both at the same time, and they just keep perpetuating that. Mm-hmm. But they could make it go away in one round. If when AC Wave 2 comes out, they could say, here is 80% of the standard, or 90, you have to meet that, and then everyone would have to meet it.
Well, it seems like they're really focused on basic communication. They're focused on, like again, as was mentioned this morning, like breaking the requirement to have the same, client adapters and APs. That seems to be what they're focused on. Like let's make sure that we can get data flowing through this network. And it seems, am I wrong? Has there been any move at all to standardize any of the enterprise stuff, any of the controllers and all that?
There was a move. Sorry, there was a move, 802.11F, you can take from it. And, and Airspace was a strong proponent of 802.11F.
Well, and
they got bought.
Yeah, there have been many standards that have been ratified by the IEEE, 802.11s, 802.11f, that define these standards-based way that infrastructure manufacturers should be doing. Fill in the blank, mesh networking, interoperability, a variety of things. And just because it's considered a standard that's been ratified by somebody doesn't mean that anybody ever actually implemented it. Let's face it, the original 802.11 protocol sucks. And so a lot of the initial extensions to that, especially fostered by Cisco with the CCX program, that addressed a bunch of those deficiencies, sort of set the stage for, I'm going to develop an enterprise product, an enterprise set of features, and it's only going to be available over here. And it gave them an edge, but it also broke interoperability with everybody, right? And they sort of set the stage for being the 800-pound gorilla in the room, which ultimately fostered things like 802.11r for fast, secure roaming. But I think it's still just in shambles right now.
Yeah, but there's innovation that's being driven from this, right? When vendor X can say, hey, you want to purchase me because you're going to get X, Y, Z, right? Now this raises the bar for the other manufacturers to say, oh, well, we want to have our offering in that space.
But it forces them to do it a different way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the white box thing, I think the only way it would ever take off is if all of those features that everybody's got, well, everything gets boiled down to a common feature set, and it has to redefine itself and then grow for everybody.
That
You know what I'm
is
saying?
that
But that
is the
stifles
role
innovation.
of Wi-Fi Alliance.
Well, it depends on what you call innovation. A lot of times vendors will say, we innovated. And you look at it and it's like, what the hell am I going to do with that? I didn't want that. Well, that's not what I call innovation. It's something you're saying you gave me that I didn't ask for.
Well, then
I'm
they
not
blame it
minimizing what you're saying,
Glass.
but
Well,
I mean,
then
it
they
has
blame it
to
on
start
everybody
off
else
as
for
a
not
core.
rolling it into their product. Oh, well, we did something great, but nobody else liked it, and so it's their fault. It's not our fault.
Yeah, which is something that came up in our discussions. It was, and this is not bigger than Wi-Fi, but often challengers, like challenger companies, will come up with standards that then they can gripe and whine that the incumbents never adopted. Oh, well, we submitted this to the IEEE, or this is an open standard. And the answer, and as you guys rightly pointed out, a lot of the times these open standards are absolutely open and they're absolutely wonderful and anybody could use them, but the chance of anybody really using them is slim to none, right? Because what's in Cisco's interest or what's in anybody's interest to adopt some little challenger's open standard that would then break their monopoly on switches.
Right, and if you really look at it too, I mean, you have store brand Fruit Loops, and then you have Fruit Loops. If you ask my daughter, she doesn't want the store brand. It doesn't taste the same. You're going to go for what you know, and what's going to deliver. And then if you start to have, which I don't think we'll see, where we'll have different vendors' APs hanging from the ceiling. I can't imagine us ever seeing that. But if we did, and this interoperability came into play, we're going to lose a lot. The innovation's a large part of that.
But there is a really compelling reason, though, to go to white box APs that, basically just cost. I mean, how many APs do you buy versus how many controllers do you buy? What's the pie chart look like in terms of spend on a hospital's worth of Wi-Fi gear?
Yep. Well, but that doesn't help folks like the Aerohives of the world, the folks who are doing distributed control plane.
Controllers are dead, remember?
Controllers, yeah. So
they're the bottleneck.
So you made an assumption that you've got this controller box and you're going to hang a bunch of different APs off of it. Well, what about those folks who are doing APs that don't rely on a controller in a box?
That's a very good question. Yeah.
And I still come back to it is the Wi-Fi Alliance's job. They could fix it overnight,
We have the
but
same
their
problem.
constituent members don't want it.
Don't want it.
Name a standards body that doesn't have all the vendors in it. IETF, IEEE, Wi-Fi Alliance. The people who build those standards are the vendors. The vendors are sending and dedicating people to those organizations to go drive technology, and a lot of times it comes up, they're driving the way they see the future of networking or wireless, and
They're grinding their own axe.
yeah, and I actually think the Wi-Fi Alliance should stay out of that, because while I don't think we're ever going to see I'm going to hang 3 different vendors of APs and make them all work and play nice together.
That's a support problem, I think.
It doesn't really matter. The whole point of the Wi-Fi Alliance is I go buy a Wi-Fi phone or device, and I know that it will go in and connect and work.
At
Yeah, so it's client-facing,
bare
yeah.
minimum level. They all roam different. They all have their decisions association of how they associate different. They all do it differently because the minimum requirement is such a small hurdle. That's why we're in trouble.
Which brings us back to the problem with medical equipment and printers and projectors. You can be just all over the place and still be Wi-Fi compatible.
Yeah, because the printer company, their primary job isn't wireless. Their primary job is building printers.
Yeah.
They throw the Wi-Fi chipset in to solve a problem in their product or add a feature to their product. But you can't hold them to a standard of, well, I can make sure that your printer works with everybody else's driver.
That's exactly what Wi-Fi Alliance says their job is. They just put the hurdle so low to keep the cost down, because a printer only wants to spend 49 extra cents on a Wi-Fi chip.
Right.
And that's the minimum. If they raise the hurdle to say every medical device, every printer, every phone has to meet a higher standard. Phones, laptops, they all today meet higher standards, just different standards.
And if they raised the hurdle, what would happen is people would walk away from the Wi-Fi Alliance. They would not brand it Wi-Fi. They would say, forget it. I'm going to make it compatible or whatever, and I'm going to just,
I think they could today, because the Wi-Fi Alliance, it used to be that Cisco had a client division. They don't make clients anymore.
Yeah.
Even maybe on the client side, it's possible because none of the big vendors sell clients.
And that's interesting. I wonder if that's a cause or effect of the fact that, the fact that the clients aren't made by the AP vendors means that the clients necessarily it has to be standardized, right?
But they aren't on the wired side either, right? You've got an Intel Ethernet adapter. You don't plug that into an Intel switch.
Yeah.
No standard for
Well,
adapters.
There's
at the
a standard
hospital
for client connectivity.
Yeah, but you take anybody's gig Ethernet port on any laptop and you can plug into a gig port.
And you can take
And
anybody's
and almost
wireless
every
end card
single
and plug
feature
it to
is going to
anybody's
work.
AP.
But not so with the wireless.
And that's the wireless
Do we want
card.
to say that
Yeah,
the .3 maturity has something over the .11?
No, I think
infancy?
if you looked at 802.11, it's a much, much bigger set of specs.
Right.
And so the Wi-Fi Alliance just takes the barest minimum to count.
802
If we just raise that up like Ethernet, every Ethernet port has to do all of these features. So we just add that feature set.
But there's no Ethernet alliance, right? There's no body that's logo certifying Ethernet.
That's because they follow the IEEE standard.
Yeah, but at the same time, how many laptops support jumbo frames? VLAN support?
Fair point.
Do you have
Holding
any?
up Ethernet as an example of
Yeah,
this
don't-
is
But it's
also a fairly low hurdle.
It's way above Wi-Fi, though.
Yeah.
But getting back to that, how do you hold a vendor accountable for a certain standard of NIC? And I can tell you, the team at Methodist, my team, we are that standard. When those medical devices come in, if they don't meet our sniff test, they get a no. And some of those will just walk away, not many, but others will. What do we need to do? How do we need to fix this?
But not enough people push back. In
No,
fact,
and I
you're like
totally
one of
get
the
that.
only ones.
I totally get that. And there are other hospitals that do this. Totally get that. But on the end of the day, when you have these devices and now you take ownership of them, you either fix the problem up front or you're going to have to play with that problem in the back.
So moving it up another level, though, into the discussions that we had earlier. So essentially, client connectivity had to be standardized somewhat, and so the Wi-Fi Alliance did that. And I believe that pretty much any wireless N a client can connect to pretty much any wireless N AP, even if it doesn't support everything. At least there's good, solid connectivity there, right? Is this true?
Not necessarily. It depends upon driver versions.
Not solid connectivity. There's
and
connectivity.
their association decision of which AP to join the first time, totally different.
Yeah, there's no
Okay.
continuity.
Now, if you're at a home with a single AP and a single client, yes.
Probably won't see much
I
problems.
think it's more on the client side. Even if it's via AP or whatever, they can do everything. The problem is on the client side.
Well, here again, the Wi-Fi Alliance hasn't really put the screws down, even to those basics of this is what you're going to roam, or this is how you're going to interpret signal and
signal
noise,
strength,
or this is how you're going to do
totally.
that. It's like it's an autonomous. Every
Yeah.
driver change could change
Yeah.
that way of thinking.
And
One
does.
vendor will have 12 notches on the ruler, and the other one has 3, another one has 5, and they're just showing bars, which means nothing. It's all irrelevant.
How many? I mean, other than the fact that I'm hoping that they're going to fix it, how many of us are looking for to dealing with Apple changing? They announced that they're going to change some of their roaming algorithms.
Yep.
At least it's the devil we know today. Historically, who knows what we're going to get? I mean, we've seen Mac OS 10 products roam drastically different from iOS products over the years, and I'm a little scared and paranoid in the short term of what that's going to do to a large iPad deployment or a large iPhone deployment.
Not just iOS. Just inside of Android, every point change in the level changes those issues. And not everyone implements at the same time, so you have the base of clients is all over the place.
And there is no consistency in Android devices anywhere.
That's a whole other problem.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
But again, moving it up from clients, we talked about SDN today. Does SDN have the promise of liberating APs?
Well, it has the promise. I don't think it's a real promise.
I think we're
Because
really
that's what we heard from some folks, that SDN might
you mean
give
liberate
us this
controllers.
future
They're still going to have
controller
APs.
from the AP.
We'll pull the controller out of the network and replace it with SDN.
and have maybe white box switches, maybe multi-vendor, or APs, maybe multi-vendor. Is that a realistic promise?
In a support model, though, you save some money up front, but the support model, I know, at least where I work, they're concerned to have somebody to talk to, somebody's throat to choke, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, but how many companies buy 5 different vendors' switches? Right, that happens today all the time, and I think that was the point that was made. Is okay, cool. The support costs, yeah, we got that, but aren't you dealing with that today?
That's why they got a single vendor, because
Well,
they pay.
not you, but I mean
Right,
you know, other
Right.
organizations.
Right,
But
yeah.
it comes down to the fact that
how does
Ethernet as the standard is the same switch to switch to switch to switch. PoE,
Trunk links. I've
Trunk
been
links,
bit
Very
by
different.
LACP
Yeah,
information.
encapsulation and yeah.
I'm afraid I very strongly disagree with you.
Spanning tree.
Yes.
variants.
You look at
Yes.
SDN, it's kind of a future thing. It's like, it's okay, so think of it as an assimilation process, right? The software's got to go and assimilate that device and make it its own and then do whatever it wants. So everyone just makes a generic box and then SDN comes out and says, okay, I'm going to assimilate you and put all my goodness in it, and then now we can go out. It doesn't matter who made it, right?
So are you saying resistance is futile?
That's exactly it, right? You have to think about it in that model. Sorry,
but we
it's
still
coming,
have
but I
layer
think
one
it's
issues that we need to solve.
Yeah.
very
If
true.
I'm buying a
but
white
that's different
box from
from
this
that's,
and a white box
that's always
from
going to be
that.
the same, right?
Yeah.
Where layer one's always going to be layer one.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Right,
really
but if
where
you're
we
hanging
get into
multiple
that.
vendor
layer.
APs,
It's the
then-
separation of those control and data planes, right? So I'm going
Wouldn't
to
it be
take.
cool if you could have the people who are really good at layer one focus on layer one, and the people who are really good at controllers focus on controllers? Wouldn't that be a good future?
Yeah, I mean, instead of having, I have my controller and you have your controller, we abstract that out in a layer and say, hey, there's a control plane. And it doesn't matter if it's your controller or your controller. It knows how to talk to the hardware in the AP, and the AP can service clients. But it comes to the point that
you just described 802.11f, by the way.
Well, it's a
That was exactly
it's
what
a hardware
they
layer
made up.
abstraction, right? But the problem is that today I think the whole point is to sell hardware. And if you're going to say, hey, if I can sell anybody's hardware, that business model blows up. And
But haven't we seen, not just in the last couple of days, but over the history of Tech Field Day, some vendors in the Wi-Fi space just blow off the whole idea of that we have an AP. It's just an AP. It's just RF. Now let's talk about the cool stuff we do.
Yeah.
And they totally ignore that. They just buy ODM straight off the shelf stuff, and that's all they think of on the Wi-Fi side because it meets that bare minimum.
Which is a dangerous approach.
It's very dangerous.
Because then we'll end
It
up
just
with
works, right? I mean,
It just works, yeah.
And you can't live on that just works.
No.
You have to work on is it really works, right?
Yeah.
Well, and I don't
A
think
lot
it's
of
an,
companies
I don't think it's
think
it
it
just
just
works.
works.
It's a if it breaks, I get to point at somebody else.
Yeah.
It's not my
Yeah.
company's fault.
I didn't
That
tweak
too.
it.
It's,
He pointed at
less
you, Blake.
about.
He totally did. He did point at me.
No, not you. No. I mean, it's less about a bare minimum, and it's more about, hey, I'm just going to get something from an ODM, and when it doesn't work, I'm just going to file a bug, and if it's important enough, I'll just keep raising the severity level, and somebody somewhere else will fix it.
But then how much time are you
summary,
wasting?
in summary, multi-vendor Wi-Fi, white box Wi-Fi, thumbs up, thumbs down.
thumbs down.
down.
It's not going
Busted.
to happen.
Would you like it to happen, or
I would like it to happen.
I would like it to happen.
Yeah, I think
I
it'd
just
be
don't think
interesting.
okay?